Return, O virgin daughter of Israel, to these your highways by which you went. Welcome to Reunion Roadmap, a place to discover the people and communities along the highway of restoration for Israel's house of Joseph. Reunion Roadmap is a B'nai Yosef North America production. Be our guest for the next hour as we meet the people of the emerging house of Joseph here in North America. Hello, this is Stefania Pappas with B'nai Yosef North America, and with me is Al McCarn, our Executive Director. And we are going to be interviewing somebody that's from Founded in Truth Fellowship, where you go. Isn't that correct, Al?
That's right. Hayley Chase. She is a member of Founded in Truth right here in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Our topic over this next three shows is mental health and chronic health issues. Specifically, how do the people of God, how does the church, the synagogue, the fellowship, how do we deal with these things? How do we come alongside those right here in our midst who are dealing with these things? Hayley is very qualified to address this issue. She has, since childhood, suffered from mental health conditions. And it involves a lot of things, depression, abuse, etc. But she comes from a Christian background, a church-going family. What got my attention about this is when she made a presentation at our Sukkot celebration on this topic. It was the best of our breakout sessions, as far as I'm concerned, because it really touched me with a subject that impacts all of us. Now, the problem is most of us are completely oblivious to it, that there are brothers and sisters in our midst who are struggling with debilitating conditions, whether it's a physical condition or a mental condition or both. And either we just gloss over it or we're just completely unaware or we sweep it under the rug because we're not equipped to deal with these things in the appropriate way. So that's what I am hoping we will raise awareness to over this next three shows. Hayley is an advocate, and she also practices what she preaches. As we'll hear later on, she's got support groups that she calls stilled spirits, in which women who are suffering from similar things, they come together and lift one another up. There's a lot we can learn from her. And so let's go on to Rock Hill, South Carolina, and start our conversation with Hayley Chase. Well, here we are at another interview segment of Reunion Roadmap, and I am so thrilled to introduce to you my friend and fellow member of Founded in Truth Fellowship in Rock Hill, South Carolina, Hayley Chase. Hayley, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited about this.
Oh, yes. And I have been excited ever since I heard your breakout session at our Sukkot celebration a few weeks ago. An interesting topic. You presented in a 1-hour discussion about mental illness and chronic illness, which, as you explained, they are very much linked. So we will get to that. You are speaking out of your own experience, and you raised some awareness in all of us who were there, and I believe touched the hearts of all of us there. You certainly touched my heart. So I look forward to this opportunity where you can share some of that with our audience. And let me start out, Hayley, by asking, what is your story? Tell us a little bit about your background.
All right. So a little bit about my background, just in general, would be to say that I grew up mostly in Oregon and then in Oklahoma and I'm working my way across the country, basically. But to kind of break down to, kind of the heart of my story a bit would be to say, when I was about 5 to 7, I want to say, years old, then I began to experience some symptoms of mental illness. And of course, at that age range, I had no idea what that was or what was happening at all. But it very, very much became a part of my of my life, a part of my story. And I want to say that one of the biggest turning points in my life for me came when I was about 12 years old, and my mental health was really, really bad during that time frame. And I was taken by my family to counseling with a pastor, and was basically told at that point that if I had depression, if I had anxiety, that I wasn't a believer. I wasn't actually a Christian. And that created probably, I want to say, a solid decade of this battle that I was having between the reality of being ill and this belief that that illness meant that I was at odds with God, and that I wasn't actually in relationship or fellowship with God. So that was quite the struggle. It just became such a huge part of my life, was this constant longing to be in relationship with God, and this feeling that I wasn't because of my sickness. And that changed, thank goodness. When I was around 24, I want to say, right? Yeah, so about 4 or 5 years ago now. And this is kind of my testimony, so to speak. And it's an ongoing one. Very much not a one and done situation. But I was dealing with what is known as complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I just didn't know it at the time. It was undiagnosed, and there was very little research around it. But for those who don't know, CPTSD is PTSD that's not caused by one event, one large traumatic event, like a car wreck or something in war. It's caused by repetitive issues. So like childhood abuse, domestic violence, even torture scenarios are all possible causes for CPTSD. So just something that's happened over and over. For me, that was abuse in my family. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of anxiety. I had this constant fear of doing something wrong, because that was such an issue growing up. You know, the abuse was very much linked to, mistakes or errors. And I had a time frame where I was reading through the Bible just a little bit, just flipping here and there, just reading little pieces. And I came across a verse in Jeremiah that said, "My people have committed 2 sins. They have turned from me and have pursued broken cisterns that can hold no water." And I'm paraphrasing that a little bit. It's not 100% accurate on it. I have a terrible memory, but that was the summation of it. And when I read that verse, I had an image pop into my head. And it was of this girl in the desert. And she was on her knees, and she was digging in the dirt. And she was crying, and her hands were torn and bloody, and there was just this futility to what she was doing. She was just digging and digging and digging and hurting herself in the process. And it was such a powerful image, and it just stuck with me. I could not get rid of that picture. It stuck with me to the point that it started to annoy me. I started to get upset, and I started to pray about it, even though I was still very uncertain of my relationship with God. And just say, like, God, I don't understand why I keep thinking about this. It's a very hopeless picture. I don't like it. I don't like the way that it makes me feel. I don't want to keep thinking about this over and over again. And I don't understand why I am. And it was about a few weeks after that, and I still hadn't gotten rid of that thought, that I made a mistake at work. And it was a very minor mistake in retrospect. But at the time, being as scared of making mistakes as I was, it severely messed with my mental health. And I just kept spiraling out that day so badly, to a point where I was at the end of my rope. I did not want to go through a bad week, a bad month, a bad year again. I was I was really tired at that point. I'd been dealing with mental illness for so long, and had basically decided earlier in the year that if it got bad again, if I spiraled out again, that I wasn't going to do it another year. I was, and I basically told God earlier in the year that, look, if this happens again, if it gets really bad again, I'm not going to keep living. I'm just going to kill myself and get this over with, because I'm so tired. So to have another night that was that bad and that severe, and feel like it was happening again, I was getting worse again. And I went home after work, just in such a bad place, and I couldn't sleep. And I sat up in bed and I was like, okay, I said I wasn't going to do this again. I wasn't going to get into a place where I had this horrible spiral and all this darkness. I wasn't going to do it again. And it's happening again. And right when I was praying that, the image of the girl in the desert came back into my mind, except it had changed. She had dug a bowl out of the earth and she was lifting it up towards heaven. And through my mind, there just came this line. It just ran through my head. It didn't feel like it was from me at all. It was just such a bold statement. It said, "This is your cistern, your mind, which is broken and cracked and can hold no water." And I broke down. I really, everything about it hit me so hard, this feeling of brokenness, this understanding that for my entire life, I had been that woman in the desert. I had been, my brain had been desperately clawing at itself and trying and failing and hurting itself and weeping. There was just so much pain in that. And that had been my state of being for my entire life that I could remember anyway. And to be able to say, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this broken cistern anymore. I want my Father to take this away. I want him to hold it. I want him to give me life. And in that, it was probably the first night in my life where I had had such a bad panic attack where I actually went away and I was actually able to go to sleep. And all of my doubt, all of those questions and fears from when I was young and had been told that I didn't have a relationship with God, that went away too. I just knew. I just knew. I was like, I do. I have a relationship with God. This is not in question anymore. And that was just the biggest turning point and healing point in my life, and continues to be such a good reference for me when things are getting bad again, when I am struggling, to look back on that and say, God is here. He is healing me. He is working for me. And I do have that relationship with him. And that's what I consider to be my testimony. It's an ongoing one. There's still more healing. There's still more work that needs to be done. But that was the biggest moment of my life.
That is a tremendous story, Hayley. So many, and it resonates with me. Certain elements in my story are similar to yours, because when you know of the relationship with our Heavenly Father, you just know. Oftentimes, and here's a point that we have a connection, that relationship which is born out of desperation, realizing there is no alternative but him.
Yes, absolutely.
And what a beautiful illustration of this image you have of the girl in the desert digging desperately. And the application of that passage from Jeremiah 2 about broken cisterns, I would encourage the audience, just check out Jeremiah 2 and see the context in which Jeremiah is speaking. But as is common with our Father, he's taken that particular thing out of context and applied it directly to your story. That is so beautiful. What I have heard, or I think I picked up on this, you grew up in a Christian family.
Yes, I did. I grew up in a very Baptist family, and let me tell you, going to a Messianic church has been a wild change. There's so many things that happen. I'm like, oh, direct hit to the Baptist inner child. But yeah, I did. It was a very almost all of my family members on my mom's side were believers. And, I grew up going to church, but it was also very legalistic in a lot of ways. And, I didn't really have a concept at that point that living as a believer was an allegiance, was a lifestyle, was, it was very emotional. Like if you had any doubt, any fear, any questions or disbelief, then you just weren't a believer. It wasn't something that you were like walking out and working out. So it was very tied up in some questionable stuff.
Okay. And so your early childhood manifestations of mental illness, you said 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Is it from growing up in that environment?
I think that it had a variety of factors. I know that environment definitely contributed to certain issues. I had a lot of scrupulosity, a lot of fear and obsessions and compulsions surrounding religion in particular. This constant fear that I was somehow evil or going to hurt people, or it just really, yeah. And a lot of when I was about 7, I remember reading a verse about not taking communion if there were issues and certain issues. And I refused to take communion from like when I was 7 to in my like early 20s because I couldn't risk it, So there was a lot of religious fear that kind of latched on to the pre-existing issues, and I think that's a fairly common situation where someone might have something that they're predisposed to genetically, or they've got trauma, they've got abuse, they've got other situational factors in play, and then the religious fear and the religious shame and all of that comes in as well, and it just all gets jumbled up together, and it's really hard to untangle that.
That it is. And this is why your presentation a few weeks ago resonated with me, and I'm sure with everyone else, because there are threads in your story that echo with all of our stories. And, I would love to pull some more of those threads and unpack even more. But I want to get to the calling that you have to raise awareness about these issues. I just want to ask one more question before that.
Yeah.
The measure of healing that you began to receive at the age of 24 by entering into that real, genuine relationship with our Heavenly Father, how has that worked your ability to forgive and be reconciled with those who, even unintentionally, might have contributed to your desperation?
I think that's an ongoing process in a lot of ways. There are times when I have this, for certain people involved, this reconciliation with them, a continued relationship with them, and, the feeling of forgiveness. And then there are other times where, unforgiveness kind of rears its head, and I have to take a step back and kind of reevaluate where I'm at with things and, continue to live out kindness and mercy despite what my feelings might be at certain times. And I remember hearing this one woman speak at my last church, and she was talking about forgiveness. And she said, forgiveness is basically, it's something we offer, and then it's something we constantly have to remind ourselves that we did. So when we tell someone we've forgiven them, then every time that kind of comes back into our minds, into our hearts, we remind ourselves like, no, I forgave that. And you keep aligning yourself with, with what you've chosen to do there. And yeah, I would say, there's also been a lot of knowledge that I've gained over time too, where I've started to see how they were dealing with their own mental struggles as well, a lot of them. And they were also raised in a culture where that's what was being taught. And, that's what they were hearing from every radio broadcast, from every sermon that they went to, every book that they read was sharing that same message. And so in a way, they were really a victim of it in a sense, just as much as I was.
Oh, The V word, victim. Yeah. As you're talking, and this too resonates so much. As you're talking, I'm remembering about 3 years ago or so, I was at a meeting where a man I respect a great deal, in fact, a great teacher, he was standing up and asking questions like what you have just highlighted. He went through a great deal of outrageous abuse. I mean, from early childhood as a toddler and on up. It is a heartbreaking story, but a wonderful story of redemption. We were talking about worship, and his question was, where are the songs about walking through the dark places where I hurt and am questioning what God can do for me? Where are those songs? Because all we do is sing about joy and happiness and peace and being right.
Yeah, no, that bothered me a lot growing up too. Was I listened primarily to Christian radio growing up, and it didn't seem like any of the reality of what I was experiencing was being discussed.
And now, Prodigal by Teshuvah, from their album Prodigal, available at teshuvahmusic.com.
When I formed you in the garden, we were walking side by side. I was yours and you were mine. I gave you every sort of pleasure except the fruit upon a tree. Then you chose it instead of me. I said, son, just how long can you stay away from your father's home? I said, son, just how long can you stay away from your father's home? You are the crown of all creation. Now you're living in the mud. Don't let this place of shame keep you from my love. 'Cause there is something that I've wanted to tell you for a while. There's still a place for you at home, my child. I said, son, just how long can you stay away from your father's home? You are the one my soul loves. I'd do anything to see you coming up the road, coming home. Come home, I said, come home.
Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the mid-rush portion of Reunion Roadmap. This is David Jones, and with me today is Barry Phillips. Shalom, brother.
Shalom, David.
Been thinking a lot lately about the state of the world, the condition of the world, and how people are responding to just things that are happening, and just kind of a blanket statement here is we need hope. And a lot of people are looking around and they don't have hope. And because they don't have hope, they're scared and they're keeping making decisions based in fear. And we shouldn't be doing that. Where the scripture says, let the peace that he gives help be our, help us make our decisions, peace in him, let him help us in these things. And so I'm thinking there's a connection here. If we don't have hope, we don't have peace. If we don't have hope, it would be easier for us to fall into fear because we're looking to hope towards something else. And hope is not just something that, oh, well, maybe someday I hope things get better, kind of thing. There's more to this word here, hope. Makes me think here. I was looking in Psalm 71:5, and this is kind of one of the things that kind of got me started thinking about it. Psalm 71:5, and it says, "For you, O Lord, are my hope, my trust, Yahweh, from my youth." And then verse 6, "Upon you I have leaned from before my birth. You are he who took me from my mother's womb. My praises continually of you." I mean, all of this is good, but the point of there being, you, Yahweh, are my hope and my trust, my whole life. And so here he pairs hope and trust together. So hope and faith, trust, faith, belief, it's all the same word. So this word hope kind of zeroed in on that. The word hope is tikva, which many of our listeners may have heard from Hatikva, which is the Israeli national anthem, right? And it's right. The hope. It's the hope. That's what we're looking for. So it is the hope. So what does the word hope mean? And generally we would say, okay, well, it's just something that we're have an expectation for, something that we're just kind of longing for, kind of thing, right? But if we take a look at that in Hebrew, the tikva, the word kavah is the root of that, and kavah means to bind together or to collect together, to gather something together. So with that thinking, I'm thinking, okay, so when David says, Lord, you are my hope, he's saying we're bound together. We're connected. You are bringing me together to a relationship with you, and we move together. That is a relationship that we should have with Yahweh because we are in covenant with him. We are his children. We move together. But then we see where Yeshua says in John 17, where he says, Father, I pray that they are one like you and I are one. And that's not just to be one with the Father, but to be one with one another as well. So I'm looking at all these things saying, okay, so if we say you are my hope, that's kind of an admission of saying we are bound together. We are brought together. And then we're hoping in him. Then as we're coming to him and we're being bound together in him, we're obviously going to see others that have bound themselves to them. And I'm thinking all those that are called by my name, kind of a thing. And we can look and say, Yahweh, I hope in you, I trust in you, and I want to be connected and drawn into you. But why is that guy here? He's ruining it for me.
Everything was good till they showed up.
So I'm thinking there's this thing in here that we need to learn when we hope in Yahweh, we trust in him. We always think about it's just him. But how often is our hope in him being manifest in the actions of his people around us to help us? So we're hoping in him, especially in difficult times when we say, Lord, I'm hoping in you, I'm trusting in you. How many times does he try to put people around us to to try to keep that hope centered on him and to try to help each other along the way. So here's a kind of, we do this to each other a lot, Barry. We kind of start to open something up and we start to see a few different directions we can go with this. I don't know. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking that you're doing a great word study there. I'm just kind of sitting here and taking some notes type thing. Couple thoughts. One is you mentioned the root word, kavah, and from the Gesenius Hebrew Chaldean lexicon. Man, it just makes you sound intellectual to say that, doesn't it?
Just to be able to pronounce it, right?
Yeah, well, I'm just reading it right off the page. Among the definitions of this word, of course, you mentioned about being a line or a rope to twist, to bind. But a secondary one is to be strong and robust. And that is that a 3/4 cord is not easily broken. The more you twist together various strands, the stronger the end result. But we've all seen a rope that begins to become unbraided, or the end is frayed and it starts to unwind. That's not a very trustworthy cord, something you would want to bind something down with, make it secure if it was of any value. So our hope is it's not standing alone. It's I'm going to try to be a rock all by myself, but rather it's community, which is something B'nai Yosef has been trying to promote since our inception, is the idea of robust community, a functioning family. The idea is not to create another organization, but to be a living organism that is strong and resilient because we know what our identity is. We know what our obligations to the Torah are, and we know that we need each other, even if we disagree on some various points, that there is plenty to agree on and be willing then to be tied together so that the end result of this unity community is a stronger cord. We all have come out of seasons of isolations and lockdowns and those type of things. Even if you were able to do meetings through Zoom or the like, and you feel some sense of connection, there is something about seeing people face to face. Our congregation is operating on a little bit different calendar than many, in so much that we just finished our Sukkot last Thursday. And so we were highly encouraged and greatly benefited by having some face-to-face time and living together in community. And our folks left very much enthused, very much positive. Hallelujah. Some Sukkots don't turn out that way.
Right.
But it was just an overwhelming, powerful, positive, and spirit-filled event. Encouraged along by the idea that we know that we need each other, and being able to sit down and eat together, sit around a campfire together, worship together, study together, read the word together, and just fellowship face to face. Man, that was powerful. It was highly encouraging. It fills you with an idea of hope, David, that no matter what's in the headlines or in the world around us, we know who we are. We know we have a common destiny. We have a secure destiny. And we're tied to that destiny. You know, it's not, that's the line that connects you and I. Well, you and me would be the better way to say that. I'm trying to catch myself on that one. The line that binds you and me to our future, to our called destiny, is a line that no government, no entity, no philosophy, no demands can cut. We're the only ones that will cut that one. As long as we're willing to maintain that attachment to our Creator and to walk according to His Torah, to walk uprightly and righteously before Him, that line is secure. That hope is secure. It's when we lose hope. The scripture says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And there are warnings in scripture that in the last days there will be those that may not endure to the end. They may lose hope. What does that mean? They may untie themselves from the line that is attached to their future, to their kingdom calling. So my words today is, don't do that. No matter what happens, no matter who happens, no matter what events may take place, don't be so discouraged that you untie yourself from the hope that is attached to the kingdom, because that is the one thing is absolutely secure.
Great words. And make a point in there too. Still we're looking at the same kind of thing. There's a connection between hope and what we're tied to. Now, let me throw another iron in the fire here. The root of that, kavah, it can also be translated as wait. And now, when I say that, a lot of people, just because, things we hear, go back to Isaiah 40:31, but they that wait for the Lord will renew their strength, mount up like wings of eagles, run not be weary, walk not faint. Well, that's wait is the word kavah, and it doesn't mean, I'm just going to sit here and wait. That's not a manifestation of hope. Kavah means serve. And you're like, well, why would they put wait there? Well, it's kind of like in English, if you go to a restaurant or somewhere, they call them wait staff. Well, what are they doing? they're serving.
So
and,
the word wait there is actually more about being an attendant.
Correct. And so this is something for us in our hope, in us coming together and being bound together in unity of heart, unity of mind, unity of purpose. We're not just sitting back waiting for somebody else to do something. We are actively serving. They who serve upon Yahweh, those who serve for Yahweh.
Good word.
And now we're looking at, Yahweh wants to do many great and mighty things with his people, but he's going to use his people to do that. Quite a few years ago, I don't know, I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe even 20 years ago, there was a song that said, I want to be your hands. I want to be your feet. And that's what we should be doing. Yahweh will do things for us, but he wants to do things through us. And so our hope is in him, but because our hope is in him, we show that to those around us. That kind of makes sense, that in our hope, there's an act of serving.
So hope and belief are on the same requirement. Then is there has to be some sense of demonstration for it to have validity.
Yeah, and that, back how I started this, Psalm 71:5, right? You are my hope and my trust. Well, trust means faith, means belief.
Mm-hmm.
And so hope and belief do go hand in hand, and in more ways than one, that we're looking at here.
One last thought before we go, and time's quickly running out on us. I found that in Tikva, one of the first uses is concerning Rahab, to let down the scarlet cord out of her window in hope and expectation of deliverance in the time of siege. So, we're waving the line at you. Secure us and deliver us, for our hope is in you. And David, we run out of time, man.
Yeah, that'll call us. Maybe we'll have to do something else about that line here at another show.
Yeah, yeah. So, folks, if you want to reach us, you can do so at Reunion Roadmap at BeneYosefNA.com. We'd love to hear from you.
And now from Will Spires, Oil for Joy.
Sometimes I feel alone, just a blowing in the wind. But yesterday's fire's not gonna carry you through the days offering. Oh, then I look above my head, there's a million witnesses. Oh, your holy tree is burning bright. We're all grafted in. We're grafted in. Lord, I wanna be grafted in your tree of life. Oh, shine for all to see. Today receive my offering. You give me joy, you give me life. You give me life. You give me life. You set things right through the night. Storm comes bearing down, cold rain pouring in. But yesterday's fire's not gonna carry you through the days offering. Oh, but then I look above my head, there's a million witnesses. Holy tree is burning bright, and we're all grafted in. We're grafted in. Oh, Lord, I wanna be grafted in your tree of life. Oh, shine for all to see. Today receive my offering. You give me joy, you give me light. You give me light. You give me light. We set things right through the night. Yesterday fire not going to carry you. Yesterday fire not going to carry you into the tree you're grafted into. Watch it burn now, but it's not consumed. Yesterday fire not going to carry you. Yesterday fire not going to carry you. Cling to the tree you're grafted into. Watch it burn now, but it's not consumed. Lord, I wanna be grafted in your tree of life. Whoa, shine for all to see. Today receive my offering. You give me joy, you give me life. Lord, I wanna be grafted in your tree of life. Shine for all to see. They receive my offering. not going to carry you. Cling to the tree you're grafted into. Watch it burn now, but it's not consumed.
That was Oil for Joy, the latest song by Will Spires, one of his best. They keep getting better. You know, Will has already put out some excellent music, but he just keeps growing in his art. Now, before that, we heard Teshuvah singing Prodigal, and then our Midrash, the subject is hope. All right, all of that together with the first installment of our conversation with Hayley Chase. And, you know, Stefania, there is a need for talking about hope, for talking about joy. How do we get joy? And much of it has to do with coming back to our Father. Hayley's testimony has a lot to do with that. I was struck in interviewing her with the fact that she spent 10 years holding God at arm's length because of an unfortunate experience in church as a child, because the pastor didn't know how to properly handle the condition she was struggling with. How common is this in your experience, Stefania, and knowing that you are a professional in this field?
Well, I think it's the issue of there's so many different things, events that happen with our past that can impact how we deal with situations, particularly if you're a child, if they happen to you, and if you're a very young child, you don't know how to deal with these. And then what you do is that your body, the way that it's trained to do is to protect itself. You encapsulate that pain into a compartment inside yourself. And it's not maybe until later on that you begin to find out that these are issues now that need to be addressed and you need to flush them out. It's kind of like a hunter who goes grouse hunting, and he needs that pointer dog to point that grouse out so it will flush out of the brush and you can get it out in the open. Once you get it out in the open, that's when healing can begin. But again, like she has emphasized throughout this interview, it's a process.
It's a process, and it sounds like a process where we're already starting off at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Because of the stigmas attached to having a mental condition.
Absolutely.
Or even, and the reason that Hayley puts together mental illness and chronic illness, because they are linked. You know, if you have a physical condition that just has no end, there's a stigma to that. You know, I'm thinking of the woman who had an issue of blood for 12 years, a chronic issue. Yeshua healed her because of her faith. But what about the stigma that was attached to her during all those 12 years?
Exactly.
Now, this is the importance of having Hayley with us and sharing her story to, I hope, motivate us to become aware of the issues right next to us as we're standing and worshiping on a Shabbat. Who next to me is suffering something? And maybe if we raise awareness, we can help to overcome that problem of stigma and shame and embarrassment and whatever it is that prevents from getting this thing out in the open so we can start dealing with it.
Yes. And I think of actually Psalms 126, I believe that's the one I'm referring to is correct, is where it talks about those sowing in tears shall reap with songs of joy, bearing their sheaves with them. And I think that ties actually even into the Midrash, where it's talking about bearing the sheaves. What are those? I mean, it's kind of like, I think it's the sheaves of the fruit of those people that you encounter, those lives that you touch, and those people who are broken, who are beginning to be made whole.
And that's an excellent way to wrap up this program. So thank you, Stefania. Thanks to Barry and David. And thanks also to our guest, Hayley Chase. She will be back with us again next week on our next edition of Reunion Roadmap.
Thank you for joining us on Reunion Roadmap, a production of B'nai Yosef North America. Please come back next week for another visit with the people of the emerging House of Joseph here in North America.